And it made it seem like this town that was so small and secluded into this mega masterpiece that everyone should visit no matter where you're from. It showed all of these things to do and how interesting they were. Those things are there to do, but no one ever does them. It's kind of like living at the beach and never going to the beach. But for me, like, I just thought it was funny for this. That's why I chose this topic, and I'm just gonna kind of go over some of the things they hit on in that video and like the things that we actually do when we live in Wimberley, Texas. Blue Hole Regional Park. Blue Hole Regional Park is basically like this little park that has part of the river going through it, and it's nice and secluded. It's got a bunch of like oak trees and stuff. This one isn't as popular, but it is one of the main attractions when it comes to Wimberley. Another area that people like to go to is Jacob's Well. Jacob's Well is one of the most famous water spots in the state of Texas, one of the most famous like photography areas. It is basically like, if you wouldn't know it was from Wimberley, but it is from Wimberley. It's basically like this part of the river that has a big hole in it that goes down 145 feet. It has 7 or 8 caverns, and people just like to jump into it off of a big rock. The third are well known that I'm pretty sure all of the high school kids go to is Mount Baldy, which is in Wood Creek, which is like a little subdivision of Wimberley. Basically, Mount Baldy is 145 foot up in the air above the valley, and you can see everything if you go up there at night. It's really cool to watch the stars. But the biggest like tourist attraction overall is definitely Wimberley Market Days, which happens the first and last weekend of every month. Wimberley Market Days basically turns Wimberley into a tourist town. It's basically to like put this into your head. Wimberley is a small town with 4 stoplights. And the only time there's traffic is when school is getting let out. For Wimberley Market Days, there's traffic all day long, and people from all over the state of Texas come. Our population goes from around 6,000 to about 14,000 for a weekend. During market days, they sell a bunch of stuff. There's a bunch of entertainment. We have barbecue cook-offs and stuff like that. The last thing that in this video was the Wimberley Square. The Wimberley Square is sort of on the outside of town, but it's not different from any other little square. It's got a bunch of antique shops and winery stuffs and fancy little places to eat. This is one of the bigger attractants too, because people thrive for all of these little shops and all these cool little places to eat. Now, it's basically getting into the part to where like the things we actually do when we live in this town, which doesn't differ from anything more than eat, sleep, go to school, and like go home. Wimberley, Texas is a really small town. There's not much to do. On paper, it might look like a lot, but these are things you can only do once or twice. Like I said, no one wants to go to the beach if you live on the beach. You go once or twice. And when you do want to go, it's super cold outside and no one's ever there. That's the time to go. The same thing happens for Wimberley. With Wimberley, the market days is amazing, yes, and it brings in a lot, but it is one of the biggest headaches when it comes to someone actually living in Wimberley. All of this comes together and shows that like Wimberley is a great little town, but it is somewhere that I would never want to actually visit per se. There isn't much to do. There's a nice little quote that a guy in Wimberley has on the back of his truck that I feel like sums all of this up. It's basically, thanks for coming, but don't stay, just spend your money and leave. And he basically says that's the Wimberley way. And I feel like that's a really good way to summarize it, is people go, they spend their money and they leave.